Welcome back to the Sober Sofa. My name is Shanti Patty Owen. I'm your host for this channel, where we discuss all topics related to addiction and sobriety. I was a former model back in the 80s, and since 2016, I have worked as a sober companion and a sober coach. I was never content, though, with my need to be in love and in a relationship. However, I preferred that to being in lust. I accepted lust only as a bad second to love, and I accepted it often. I am a sex addict, love addict, an alcoholic, a compulsive gambler, and a debtor. Today's topic is my memoirs. Memoirs of a Legal Courtesan, a sex and love addict's journey to sobriety. I know when I first started this channel, I made mention of my memoirs a couple of times, and I have recently been asked if I have the audiobook. I do not have the audiobook yet. However, I thought to myself, you know what? I'm going to read a couple of passages. Actually, I'm going to read the author's foreword at the beginning to give you an idea of what's entailed in these memoirs. And I first want to give you a very, very brief background on what created me writing these memoirs. In 2012, I started attending 12-step programs for sex addiction, love addiction. And I also spent a lot of time on the internet doing research because I was totally aghast that I had these addictions. And what I found were tons of books for women on love addiction, many, many books, but there were practically none about women with sex addictions. They were mostly geared towards men, and I was incensed because I clearly had the sex addiction component as well. And I don't know if you've ever had this experience where you're talking to, is it your higher self, your inner self? Is it God? Who knows where this voice is coming from sometimes? But I was so angry after a second or third search for books on sex addiction for women. And I got off the internet and I heard this voice say, write the book. I'm like, write the book? Write the book. I was like, write the book? I'm not an author. Write the book. Write the book. You know, when I hear something 3 times, I pay a little more attention. And I thought about it. How could I possibly write a book about something I barely understand? And that's when the bell went off. And I said, you know what? You're going to write this memoir for women with sex addiction, especially as it's unfolding. The horror of discovering it and all that it entails. Now, the book doesn't line up that way. It doesn't start from the beginning like that exactly. But I had to start it with the beginning horrors, which come later in the memoir. So I'm going to read you the author's foreword. By the way, if you get the paperback version, you will not only see the cover, which you get with the Kindle version, but you'll also get to see the entire spread, which I love. And I worked really hard to manipulate this. And by the way, that is me. Okay, author's foreword. Midlife crisis gone wild, remedy for 9/11 trauma. I began formulating my memoirs somewhere in the midst of my years of legal lust in New York City. Who knew the corporate world of law could offer such a sensual pool to fish from? I was a legal secretary in a highly prestigious law firm from 2002 to 2006. I worked for the senior partner and enjoyed my sexual liaisons with attorneys, clients, and even the boys in the mailroom. I was the unofficial social director, and everyone came to my desk for directions to the next fun after-work event. We worked together, played together, and sexed together. One big, happy, legal lump of lust. I never knew turning 40 would be so much fun. The gals from Sex and the City were tame compared to me. I thought my sensual liaisons as supermodel Patty Owen could never be trumped. Living on fame and fortune in the 80s was a nightly extravaganza with plenty of sensual liaisons to fuel the ride. Yet here I was, after a decade of deep spiritual study, to arrive in 2002 atop the ethereal Twin Towers. I was high and tripping on my drug of lust and love. But it wasn't until the summer of 2008 when I left my life in law and I felt inspired to write down my sexcapades as a legal outlaw. Perhaps my inspiration was this escalating sensual life with my new boyfriend, Leonard. Escalating. How could my sex life possibly be escalating? Until I met Leonard, I thought I had hit the peak, or rather the bottom of my lust barrel. He made me look like a prude. Is that why I fell in love with him? Finally feeling like a virgin again? Until meeting Leonard, I was naive about the world of kinky sex. With all his sex parties, Craigslist personals, and BDSM equipment, I felt like a newbie. His extensive sexual experiences had the positive effect of minimizing all my promiscuous years. My life with Leonard was a constant barrage of sex, sensuality, kink, love, and lust. I agreed to enter into a swinger life because Leonard's so-called lack of sexual experiences was all that stopped him from marrying me. Curious for sure about this swinger life, but mostly I wanted to please my man so I could keep him. Love addiction at its best. Thus, a resistant swinger was born. It was not long before the financial devastation of 2008 clotted our empty tummies and wallets, so I saw nothing wrong with extending our swinger life into a more profitable activity. I became a prostitute at age 52. When I originally began writing my memoirs, I thought it would be a titillating romp through my sexcapades as a legal secretary when I was still single and wild. After a loveless and sexless 7-year marriage in the 90s, I know, the 7-year itch, I was ready for a good dose of lust. Well, that is what I thought anyway. Little did I know I was on a journey deep into my sex and love addiction, a journey fraught with painful consequences that ended with me remarried, yet being paid to have sex with wealthy men. Yes, I wanted to believe it was legal. They were merely helping a lady who found herself in a difficult situation. Until recently, few people recognized that sex and love addictions even existed, especially not for women, and least of all for me. Although I knew I had tremendous difficulty being alone for more than a few hours at a time, I had an even more difficult time coping outside the cocoon of a romantic relationship. When I was between relationships, I was absolutely miserable. Later on, I adopted the serial dating approach so I wouldn't have a moment to lament while desperately hoping to find the next Mr. Right. But I just told myself that this was a fun adventure, and for the most part, I did have fun, as long as the addiction was fed. I was never content, though, with my need to be in love and in a relationship. However, I preferred that to being in lust. I accepted lust only as a bad second to love, and I accepted it often. Memoirs of a Legal Courtesan is about my zany, fun, sexy, dangerous, lonely, courageous, and painful life of longing, lust, and love. I hope that men and women who suffer with sex and love addictions, consciously or unconsciously, or know of those who do, will find insights, compassion, humor, hope, healing, and recovery from reading about my memoirs. My journey to sobriety. So, this was my gift to the planet. It took me several years to write this. I didn't work at the time. I wasn't making income, but I kept fueled by the certainty that this book would help many, many people, especially women, because we hide in the shadows. We not only hide in the shadows, I think we are buried in the shadows. We do not want to admit, especially when it comes to sex addiction, we do not want to admit we have a sex addiction. We'll admit to love because love is a sweet thing. Oh, I was just addicted to love. But sex addiction has a particular stigma for both men and women, but especially for women. So I hope you have more insight into my memoir. I'm going to leave a link where you can purchase the memoir. If you have a Kindle membership already, it's free, but I would encourage you to get the paperback so you could get the fabulous, full shot. Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for subscribing to this channel, for hitting the bell notification, and for giving thumbs up to my videos. I really appreciate it. Please forward any of these videos you think would be helpful for yourself. If you want to send it to your email so you can find it easily, or if you want to send it to anybody that you think might be struggling with addiction issues. I so appreciate all of you. Remember, leave comments And you can always send me an email if you're a little too shy to leave a comment at sobersofa@gmail.com. And I look forward to seeing you next week back on the sofa.